Human Consciousness 2. Transparency versus secrecy. Secrecy has kept humanity from progressing in several ways. While we currently live in an environment where secrecy has been heralded as a way to protect and control information, people, and cultures, it has also kept humanity from progression. This concept is in fact so progressive that some are threatened by the very concept. It means that monetary wealth, technological advances, and trade secrets would be threatened according to current standards. Humanity must eventually realize that it is our environmental factors that are flawed and must someday change if we are ever to progress in our spiritual evolution. Secrecy is actually a weakness when considering the other side of the coin. Imagine a race that creates advancements and then freely shares it with humanity. Where would their weakest link be? Their energy would be spent on the next advancement and not on maintaining control of a particular advancement. When we tap into truth, it does not mean that we really own it or even created it. Truth, advancement, empowerment all belong to humanity, and it is really awareness that brings about the realization of these things. Humanity needs to ask, which momentum would we like to create? Sometimes we get so caught up in our cultures that we forget that humanity is a spiritual community. From a higher perspective, humanity has unison. As an example, we consider the human body. If your brain wishes to keep a secret from your leg, then your leg cannot function at its highest level. If your leg wishes to keep a secret from your brain, then function will be impaired. The human body works the same way. We can only be as great as the least of ourselves in a community. In our culture, we use the predator-prey mentality to justify the current system. In reality, the secrecy and control produce low-energy momentum. Instead, empowerment and transparency create a high-energy momentum. Power and control is a low-energy momentum, and it brings about regression and fear. Whereas empowerment and transparency is a high-energy momentum, and it brings about progression and love. Control and secrecy bring about fear factors, which is also a low-energy wave source. Those who live by fear cannot progress and give up their ability to think in conjunction to feeling. Fear acts as a vacuum that feeds secrecy and control. It works much like a bully on a playground. When everyone has fear of the bully, then the bully has power and is fed off of this power. If, however, transparency surfaces, with those who have been bullied would come about, then the bully is suddenly reduced to a member of the community and is not exclusively separate. Transparency would then reveal that the bully has been using fear that has caused a lack of cohesiveness. When the group then gives up the fear, then the community becomes the strongest force. The bully can only be king as long as he is viewed as if he is on a throne. When the weakness of fear is revealed, then the higher energy momentum once again begins to progress, and the transparency brings about empowerment. Transparency is a practice that humanity needs to appreciate. This means that we will have to recognize our addiction to power, money, and control. It means that secrecy only serves to stunt our spiritual maturity. These lower energy momentums cannot allow the progression of humanity as a species. We must embrace transparency and allow our race to progress in a way that will bring about our realization that we are a race that is connected on every level, regardless of the allocation of resources, understanding, money, power, and technology. Transparency is the next step in human spiritual evolution, where we can achieve the appropriate use of free will. In our journey of life, we seek many things. We try to fulfill our goals, obtain love, and achieve what we set as our own personal standards. However, there is a component that is essential to achieving spiritual maturity. Personal responsibility is awareness that we are co-creators in our lives, and we choose to take the responsibility for our choices, actions, and reactions. We look beyond environment, circumstances, and individuals to discern appropriateness. We are aware that we have the power to react in situations. We have the power to create opportunities by our behavior and attitudes. We have to take personal responsibility for every aspect of our lives before we can truly mature. The victim mentality. Sometimes dark things evade our lives and we find ourselves pushed to reveal parts of ourselves. We are on a journey to learn and grow in our circumstances, and through this we will face certain obstacles that we will either be our teacher or an opportunity to move on to something new in ourselves. If the path of teacher is warranted, then we have a choice. We can choose the attitude of victim, or we can allow ourselves to grow. This is a choice, and we are the ones who decide. Some choose the victim role, and this can improperly fulfill some emotional needs. If one chooses to stay in the victim role for a period of time, then instead of personal growth, devaluation of the person can occur. We are always valuable, but we must be consciously aware in order to live it. When we are a victim, then we are distracted by the victim traits and lose sight of the more meaningful aspects of ourselves. The bottom line is that the victim mentality is an indication that we are stuck on a lesson. The harshness of this reality is enough to keep some away from risks. Playing it safe will only mean that we will remain still in our timeline of life. Because we live in the constraints of a three-dimensional reality, we are always moving in a linear direction in our current awareness. This, of course, is an illusion, and as our souls do not live in a linear constraint. But this serves as a plane where we can live a physical existence. Our choice will bring us success in that linear timeline, or we will receive a failing grade and need to repeat that lesson. We can choose the victim path or personal responsibility. The victim path looks something like this. This is what happened to me. Focus is on oneself and the lacking. It's a low energy momentum and the action that reinforces belief or habits. The spirit can choose. This is what happened to me. It's a creation from motive of thoughts. Focus is on oneself and the lacking. Formulation from feelings. It's a low energy and momentum, which is the expression generated from emotion. And the action that reinforces belief or habits, which would be a delivery of actions. Personal responsibility, on the other hand, looks something like this. Creation from motive of thoughts would be, I am part of this and I choose to. Formulation from feelings would be, focuses on seeking balance and stability of energy. The expression from generated emotion would be a high energy momentum. And the delivery of actions would be action reflecting balance. Taking responsibility. We are responsible for our thoughts. We are responsible for our feelings. We are responsible for our emotions. We are responsible for our actions. This means that we are responsible for finding the faulty breakdown between what we seek to create and what we act upon. Being consciously aware that we are responsible for our own journey and the reactions that we display on that journey means that we alone are our biggest obstacle and our biggest asset. Fear in responsibility. Fear should never be the catalyst of a decision. While we will again acknowledge that the fight or flight mode can save a human from a chasing bear, most decisions in life are not based on that premise. Even if we do allow fear to bring us to a decision, then we must take personal responsibility for the consequences of that fear. When fear is in power, then love is not being expressed. This means that we must do our best to come to terms with the fear in our lives. When we do take responsibility and begin to open enough to learn the lessons that are presented, then we will begin to create opportunities. We will show that we have learned the lessons needed and our next steps can be explored. Our attitude will allow us to see the opportunities that are available. We will also be sending out positive reinforcement to our environment and preparing a way for positive circumstances. When negative situations or obstacles are present once more, we then need to behave in a way that shows we have moved beyond that and see the lesson. Sometimes we will also face circumstances for the benefit of others. Humanity is like a network, and we are all connected. If we are to be used as a mirror or as a sounding board for others, then we must also consider this factor. A positive force. When we are humble enough to see our part in the circumstances in our lives, then we will become a positive force for ourselves and others who are also seeking to grow. Our personal responsibility creates a web that connects to the elements of our lives, but also the lives of others. We live in a dimension of free will where even our choice to be personally responsible is given. We should not take too long in deciding to be co-creators in the opportunities of our lives. To do so would mean that we would be stifled in the possibilities of our lives.